Alright, hello, I'm Mr. Pisto, and we're about to talk about Phyrexian Preators in Standard Brawl. Alright, so the first Preator that we're going to talk about is Elesh Norn. One of the cool things I like about this new Preators in March of the Machine is we actually get the named character, not Elesh Norn something something. This is just straight up Elesh Norn. So 4 mana, 3/5 with Vigilance. And whenever a source an opponent controls deals damage to you or a permanent you control, the source's controller loses 2 life unless they pay 1 generic mana. So in the late game, this is going to be a pretty hefty price to pay to actually deal damage to you and not fill out their board. And then you can pay a color or 2 colorless and 1 white mana, sacrifice 3 other creatures, exile Elesh Norn, then return it to the battlefield transformed under your control. You can only activate this as a sorcery, and it comes back as the Arrogant Etchings. This is a saga. When it comes into play, you incubate 5 times, then you transform all incubator tokens you control. So incubate is a new keyword, a new ability, a new attribute here in March of the Machines. So when you incubate, you get a 0/0 token that has X counters on it. In this case, there are 2 counters on it. So when they flip, they will become 0/0 creatures with that many 1/1 counters on it. So this time you will instantaneously get 5 2/2 incubator creatures. And then its next step is creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain double strike until the end of turn. And then its final ability is destroy all other permanents except artifacts, lands, and Phyrexians. So these incubator tokens are Phyrexians, so they will hang around. And then this flips back to Elesh Norn. And then if you have 5 of those 2/2 tokens, you can sacrifice those 2/2 tokens, 3 of those to flip it over, and you get 5 more. So Elesh Norn will be quite the engine when it comes to actually being a commander. So I got 5 cards that I think are going to go well with Elesh Norn. One of those is Sunfall. So 5 mana, sorcery, exile all creatures, incubate X, where X is the number of creatures exiled this way. So if you flip Elesh Norn, get those 2/2s, then Sunfall, you exile all of those creatures, you get 1 giant incubator token that you can flip for 2 mana to transform it into a 0/0 Phyrexian artifact. There we go. And then that creature on the next turn is going to get +1/+1 and double strike. You're going to destroy everything else. You're going to flip Elesh Norn, and then you're going to complete the process over again. Then we have the Progenitor Exarch. This is a 1 mana XX. So when it enters the battlefield, you incubate 3 X times. So if you pay 3 mana for this, you incubate 3 once. If you pay 5 mana for this, you incubate 3 twice, and then you can tap it to transform one of your incubator tokens into a Phyrexian artifact for free. So I think it's going to play well with the whole Phyrexian synergies here in this deck that we're going to build. Then we have Phyrexian Censor. Each player can't cast more than 1 non-Phyrexian spell each turn, and non-Phyrexian creatures enter the battlefield tapped. So with Elesh Norn, we're going to want to pump a whole bunch of Phyrexian creatures and artifacts into our deck, because on the backside with the Argent Etchings, those creatures aren't going to die. And we're going to want to be playing the Phyrexians. I know a lot of the creatures in the previous set were Phyrexian creatures as well. So I'm going to kind of lean into the Phyrexian creature type of thing. So you get to pay 1 instant or sorcery, because there are no tribal instants or sorceries in this format, but you get to play a whole bunch of good Phyrexian creatures. One of those instants and sorceries that I think we're going to be playing, and probably in almost every white deck, is Sunder the Gateway. It's a 2 mana sorcery. You get to choose 1. You can either destroy target non-token artifact, or enchantment an opponent controls and then incubate 2. They put non-tokens so you can't target other incubate tokens, or you can just incubate true and then transform an incubator token you control. So you can incubate 2 and then flip an incubate token that is bigger. For example, one of the incubator tokens that is made from the Progenitor Exarch, because there are 3, incubate 3. So this is going to have a lot of flexibility, not only for this deck but for all other white decks that I think we're going to play. And then we have Norn's Inquisitor. This is a 2-mana 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, you incubate 2. So you effectively get 4 mana 3/3, because you're going to have to pay 2 mana to transform your incubator token. And then whenever a permanent you control transforms into a Phyrexian, put a 1/1 counter on it. So we're going to be trying to play a lot of incubator tokens, and yeah, just kind of flood the board with Phyrexians and then let Elesh Norn do the rest. So that's the first Praetor that we're going to talk about. The next one is the one and only blue Praetor in the format, which is Jin-Gitaxias. This is a 5-mana 5/5 Phyrexian Preator, has ward 2, so it's already kind of protecting itself. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater, draw a card. Then you can pay a blue and 3 colorless, exile Jin-Gitaxias, then return it to the battlefield, transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery and only if you have 7 or more cards in your hand. So I do think this is going to be a little bit of a trickier one. When you transform it, it transforms into the Great Synthesis. So draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand. If you have no maximum hand size for as long as you control the Great Synthesis. Step 2, return all non-Phyrexian creatures to their owner's hand. So we're going to be playing a lot of Phyrexians. There's a good chance your opponent's going to be playing a decent amount of Phyrexians. So this won't bounce everything, but it'll probably bounce a good number of creatures. And then you may cast any number of spells from your hand without paying their mana cost. Exile the Great Synthesis, then return it to the battlefield on its face upside as Jin-Gitaxias. So the number 3 you're probably going to want to play down until you have 6 cards left in your hand. So then when you draw on the next turn, you can flip Jin-Gitaxias once more and continue the process. You're going to have to be careful though to not deck yourself. The 5 cards from from March of the Machines that I feel will be good in a Jin-Gitaxias deck. We have Chrome Host Seed Shark, very cool name. 3/3 or 3 mana 2/4 flyer. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, incubate X. Rex is that spell's mana value. So here again, we're getting Phyrexian creatures, and one of the mechanics that's coming back in the format is Convoke. So Artistic Refusal is a 4 or 6 mana instant, has Convoke. So your creatures can help cast this spell. Each creature you tap while casting this spell pays for 1 colorless mana or 1 mana of the creature's color. So we're gonna have some creatures out there hopefully with the Phyrexian incubate stuff, and this could in theory be a free counter spell. It could be a 1 mana counter spell depending on how many creatures you have out. Normally it's probably around a 3 mana counter spell, or you can draw 2 cards and then discard a card. So it helps us get to slowly get up to what Jin-Gitaxias wants with the 7 cards in hand. Another one of those Convoke spells, and it also triggers Jin-Gitaxias' ability to draw a card when you cast a non-creature spell with mana value 3 or greater. So Meeting of the Minds is 4 mana. Here again, it has Convoke. It's an instant. You get to draw 2 cards because it has mana value 3 or greater. You get to draw an extra card with Jin-Gitaxias. So all in all, a good value card there. This Transcended Message is 4 blue X. It has Convoke. Draw X cards. So if you have... It's going to take some investment, but I think as an instant speed, if this was sorcery, it just wouldn't really make the cut. But being at instant speed, you could probably draw a decent amount of cards late game with this, and then kind of just end the game there. And then we have Moment of Truth. This card is going to be very powerful. It reminds me of the sorcery card we had in Strixhaven. It's 2 mana. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of those into your hand, put one into your graveyard, and one on the bottom of your library. So this doesn't give you an extra card to cast per se, but there are going to be graveyard matters decks, and sometimes putting a card into the graveyard is actually better than exiling one to be able to cast it. So this Moment of Truth card, I think, is going to be very powerful. So continuing on the Urubrask aspect of things, we have the one and only Sheodred, 5 mana, 4/5 Phyrexian Preator. This one has Menace, and when it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a non-token creature or planeswalker. So it's an edict with a body. It's a little bit expensive, but you can pay 5, 1 black and 4 colorless to exile Sheodred, then return it to the battlefield, transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery, and only if an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard. So my thoughts on Sheodred and then the True Scriptures is this is going to be kind of like a discard deck for black. Not my favorite style of play, but it is definitely one, because when you flip Sheodred, each opponent you destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker that player controls. Then each player discards 3 cards and then mills 3 cards. And then in the end, you put all creature cards from all graveyards onto the battlefield under your control. Exile the True Scriptures, then return it to the battlefield face up. So then you exile it, you return it face up, they have to sacrifice a creature, and if you have enough mana to do it all over again, because you will, and their graveyard thing is going to be met. So it comes in, they sacrifice a creature, you flip it over, you destroy a creature, and you do it all again. It's just going to be a super duper big value engine. So the 5 cards from March of the Machines that I think we'll see some good play with Sheodred are as follows. Gift of Completion. So it's a 2 mana enchantment. When Gift of Completion enters the battlefield, incubate 3. Whenever a Phyrexian you control dies, surveil 1. So surveil, you look at the top card of your library, you may put it into your graveyard. With the True Scriptures, being able to put all creatures from all graveyards onto the battlefield. The concept of surveilling, you can put your big creature into the graveyard and then get it back with True Scriptures. And it also comes like a 4 mana 3/3 here again, with upside. So, and it's an enchantment, so it's a little harder to deal with. Then we have Traumatic Revelation. This is the discard card. Target opponent reveals their hand. You may choose a creature or battle card from it. If you do, that player discards that card. If you don't, incubate 3. So battle is one of the new kinds of cards. I'm going to do a video on all the battles later. So if you're watching this when it comes out and you get to that and you wonder what is a battle, go look on Scryfall and search up the battle cards. It's a very interesting new mechanic. So if that player doesn't discard a card, you get to incubate 3. So usually these kind of discard cards have a downside. Here again, it's like a 4 mana 3/3. You have to pay 2 installments, but if you miss, or if you just want the 3/3, you can make a 3/3. So if you miss with this, you actually get a creature regardless of what happens, or you get one of their creatures or battles, sorry, and then you get a creature if you need it. So it's a very versatile card, these 2-for-1 kind of dealios. Then we have Pile On. This is a 4 mana instant and has Convoke. Destroy target creature or planeswalker, surveil 2. So you can cast this for free if you have 4 creatures out and one of them is black, which is something that you can probably do fairly easily. And then the surveil 2, just with Sheodred's True Scriptures thing, is just a great way to put a creature into your graveyard to get the True Scriptures on the go. Next card we have here is Grafted Butcher, 2 mana 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, Phyrexians you control gain menace until the end of turn. So your creatures are going to have to be blocked by 2. The majority of the creatures you're going to want to play in these Predator decks are probably Phyrexians. Other Phyrexians get +1/+1, so this buffs your Sheodred to a 4 or a 5/6. You can pay a black and 3 colorless to sacrifice an artifact or a creature to return Grafted Butcher from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. So you can sacrifice one of your incubator tokens, or you can sacrifice one of your Phyrexian artifact creatures and get this back. So pretty valuable, and another card that you can just surveil into your graveyard and then bring it back. And then the final card, Nezumi Informant, is a 2-mana 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. So just a cheap way of getting a card out of your hand, giving you a sacrifice outlet. It might not be the best one for this. There's an maybe if we have an artifact version of this, that's probably better. But that's Sheodred and the True Scriptures. On to the red version of this deck with Urubrask. 4-mana 4/4 first strike. Great stat line. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, Urubrask deals 1 damage to target opponent and you add 1 red mana. So this is the new Storm card. Plays very well with Bergie in Historic Brawl. It's going to be an interesting one to try and build in Standard Brawl that we're doing here. You can pay 1 red to exile Urubrask, return it to the battlefield, transformed under its owner's control. Activate only as a sorcery and only if you've cast 3 or more instants and or sorcery spells this turn. So we're looking at cheap instants and sorceries in red to play, and then you get the Great Work. So when you flip it, the Great Work deals 3 damage to target opponent and each creature they control. You create 3 treasure tokens, and then until the end of turn, you may cast instant and sorcery spells from your graveyard. If a spell cast this way would be put into your graveyard, exile it instead, and then you get to flip the Great Work and return it to the battlefield as Urubrask. So the backside of this is not nearly as exciting as the other ones, but the front side of this I think is going to just be a blast to try and play with, and to generate a whole bunch of cheap instants and sorceries to destroy your opponent that way with a 4/4 first strike. So some of the spells that are in red that I think are going to go well with this, one of them is Into the Fire. 3-mana sorcery, choose one. It deals 2 damage to each creature, planeswalker, and battle. Or you can put any number of cards from your hand on the bottom of your library, then draw that many cards, +1. So this replaces itself on top of maybe siphoning some of your lands out of your hand onto the bottom of your library and drawing some fresh cards. Then we have Stoke the Flames. It's back, woohoo! Mono red burn is going to be a lot more fun in Standard. So this is a 4-mana instant. It has Convoke, so you can tap your creatures to produce mana for it, and it deals 4 damage to any target. So out of the blue, with no 4 creatures on the battlefield, you can burn someone for 4 damage, kill a creature with this, kill a planeswalker, deal damage to a battle. I really love this card, and I have fond memories of playing with this card way back in the day when it was first brought into Magic the Gathering. It's one of my favorite cards to play with, and looking forward to burning some people out. Then we have Volcanic Spite, 2 mana. It deals 3 damage to target creature, planeswalker, or battle, and you may put a card from your hand on the bottom of your library if you do draw a card. This is a great cycling, getting rid of a land from your hand kind of card, and dealing with a smaller creature or a planeswalker, or finishing off a battle to just give you some good card advantage in red, or some card filtering in red, which is always nice to see. Then we have Chandra, Hope's Beacon. We're going to talk about Chandra all by herself in the next video, but for the sake of this one, it's a 6-mana 5 loyalty planeswalker. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. So if you combine this with like Stoke the Flames, you have Stoke the Flames with Urubrask out, that's 10 damage right there. With Chandra on the battlefield. So that's like half your opponent's life total. Its +2 is add 2 mana of any combination of colors. In this deck, we're only going to be producing red. +1, exile the top 5 cards of your library until the end of turn. Your next turn, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from among those exiled cards. I like the exiling until your next turn. That means this can come down on 6, +1, and then you can save those cards to be played next turn. Old keywording would have had you to play these cards on your turn, and then you have no mana, so you'd always be +2ing. But now you can +1 if you have some way to protect it, And then maybe you rip that Stoke the Flames off the top and you deal a metric boatload of damage. And then minus X, Chandra's Hope beacon deals X damage to each of up to 2 targets. You can play 6 mana, minus 5, to deal 5 to their face and kill their biggest creature or kill 2 creatures. Just Red's got some really great cards here in this format. And then the last card that I want to highlight for our Urubrask deck is a Blood Feather Phoenix. 2 mana, 2/2 flyer. It can't block, so that's a little bit of a disadvantage, but whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell you control and deals damage to opponent or battle, you can pay 1 red. If you do return this card to the battlefield, it gains haste until the end of turn. So you don't have to feel afraid of attacking this thing in, because if they have like a bigger flyer and you have a burn spell, you can attack in, they block, it dies, you stoke the flames, you have 1 red mana, you can bring it back to the battlefield. So I think it's going to be a very valuable creature in an Urubrask style of deck. And the last Praetor that we have is my favorite Praetor in general. I love Vorinclex. Vorinclex and Sheodred are probably my 2 favorite Praetors just in general. We had a 5 mana 6/6 reach and trample. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for up to 2 forest cards, reveal them, put them into your hand, then shuffle. 8 mana, exile Vorinclex, then return it to the battlefield transformed under its owner's control, activate only as a sorcery. So this is a great stat line. Green usually has great stat lines, and it helps you get the mana you need to recast it if they kill it. And then when it flips for 8 mana, which is a lot, this is going to be a mono green ramp style of deck. It's the Grand Evolution. So you mill 10 cards, that's a lot, but put up to 2 creature cards from among the milled cards onto the battlefield. So in 10 cards, you're likely to hit one of the big beefy creatures in your deck, potentially 2. And then this next ability, distribute 7 1/1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. So if you have 7 creatures out, you put 7 1/1 counters on. The card we're going to highlight first will double that. And then until the end of your turn, creatures you control gain 1 colorless or 1 generic mana. This creature fights target creature you don't control. Then you exile this and you turn it back into Vorinclex. And when it enters the battlefield, because it's getting exiled and then returned, you get to get those 2 forests out, and then you can just continue the value train. So the first card we're going to highlight here is Ozolith the Shattered Spire. 2 mana legendary enchantment, or artifact I should say. If 1 or more 1/1 counters will be put on an artifact or creature you control, that many +1 counters are put on it instead. So the second ability of the Grand Evolution, this will put, you have 7 creatures, this will put 14 1/1 counters on the battlefield. You can pay a green and a colorless tap, put a 1/1 counter on target artifact or creature you control, activate only as a sorcery. It also has cycling too. Oh boy, so if you don't need this effect or you don't want this effect, you can just pay 2 mana to cycle it to find yourself a land, and it works really well with the one of the Grand Evolution's abilities. So that's why I think it's a great card for the Vorinclex deck. Then we have Tribute to the World Tree, 3 mana, 3 green mana, so we're going to be heavily into forests in this deck. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. If its power is 3 or greater, otherwise put 2 1/1 counters on it. So this makes the little creatures that you have bigger, and the big creatures help you draw cards. So the deck is going to be playing a decent amount of mana dorks to try and get to that 8 mana. So this helps those 1, 2, 3 mana spells become more potent creatures. The next card we have here is called Tandem Takedown. 3 mana, instant, up to 2 target creatures you control get +1/+1 until the end of turn. They each deal damage equal to their power to another target creature, planeswalker, or battle. So mono green, gonna have a lot of big creatures. Probably if this just did 1, it would be very good. The fact that it is instant speed also helps with, you can do blowouts in combat. It just, in general, I think it's going to be a very powerful removal spell for a mono green deck. And then we have Portent Tracker, 2 mana, 1/1, untap target land. You can choose target battle. If an opponent protects it, remove a defense counter from it. Otherwise, put a defense counter on it. Activate only as a sorcery. So the tandem takedown, big thing here is you can deal damage to a battle. Battles are going to be one of the new things that we're probably going to see a decent amount, at least at the beginning, because people are going to want to try them. They're going to want to play them because it's the new shiny toy. Similar to when Planeswalkers came out. Planeswalkers were the new shiny toys. Battles are now our new shiny toy here. Brand new kind of card. So Portent Tracker being able to ramp you, also being able to protect your battles that your opponent has put on you, because they're going to be wanting to attack their battles to get the benefit from them. And in decks like Historic, the Historic Brawl, you can untap Nykthos and just go wild. There's a lot of key things that Portent Tracker can do. And then the final card will also get its day in the light. We have Wrenn and Realm Breaker. 3 mana, 4 loyalty. Planeswalkers, lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. In this case, it doesn't really matter. There's the odd case where that might come up, but not in mono green. It has a +1 of up to 1 target, untap up to 1 target land. It becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with vigilance, hexproof, and haste. It's still a land. Do you get to untap it? You don't get to untap it. So that's kind of a disappointment there. -2, mill 3 cards. You may put a permanent card from among the milled cards into your hand. -7, you get an emblem with you may play lands and cast permanent spells from your graveyard. So if we can get up to that 7, anything that dies is fair game to come back. And I think that is a really, really cool concept. So that's all of the Phyrexian Preators. So I just want to say thank you all for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, and notify. Link for Discord is in the description below. Link for Patreon is in the description below. Thank you, Jimmy Colorado, for all your support. And have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening, or night, wherever you are in the world. From Mr. Pisto to you. Like, subscribe, notify. Stay safe. Bye for now.